Welcome, everyone. My name is Maher, and I'm here to talk about kind of the general state and provide an introduction for everyone. So I want to start off with something that shouldn't be controversial here, that businesses and academia have longly, or for a long time, valued creativity, judgment, critical thinking. This is nothing new. This is something that has been at the forefront of what we do. If we look at mission statements or look through values, I imagine both at universities and in organizations, we're going to see these continue to pop up and down, or over and over again. The uncomfortable truth is that sometimes the structures in academia don't reward these things. We value them, we do our best, but oftentimes the structures that we work in don't necessarily value or don't reward thinking outside the box. It rewards memorization and doing things as asked, rather than that critical thinking, asking new questions. And so I see AI as an opportunity to reface, to reframe what we're doing, to reassert what we value here in academia. AI makes getting the right answer, the things that we value right now, or what's easy, very cheap, very easy. The answer is there. What is scarce is framing the problem, asking the right questions, being critical of the output that it provides, thinking about boundary conditions. When is this going to be applicable? When is this going to be not? And these things can be difficult to measure. Assignments around this and assessment can be difficult. And so to me, this is an opportunity to realign, to reframe what we're looking for in academia, what is going to be valuable to you in the business community, and what's going to be what we're trying to drive within the classrooms. And that gives us, AI gives us tools on both the student side and the instructor side to help accomplish this in better ways. So to me, the beginning is alignment. How do we align these? And essentially alignment comes with what we reward. Grades are the first thing in a teacher's toolbox. Those are the things that students are going to pick up on what is valued both implicitly and explicitly through what is graded. And so how do we shift from memorization and getting the right answer and being safe into taking chances, into taking risk, and thinking outside the box and applying these tools in ways that can move us forward. And so, as Ryan has stated, this is a conversation. This is something that's not going to be solved today, but is a conversation that we're going to continue to have between us and the business community, and that will hopefully propel us forward to better align both business and education together. That's all I got. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Steve Pentland. I'm an associate professor in information technology and supply chain management here at COBE. So pretty soon after ChatGPT came out, I started noticing certain trends in my students' writing that weren't there before. There was far less grammatical mistakes. They figured out how to use commas, which I'd been working on for a while. And much of what I was seeing was kind of generically the same. And although I like to think that many students are using AI ethically, and I think a large majority are, it's getting harder and harder to know for certain as an educator what's original thought and what's prompted. So I started asking myself, how can I come up with a way to more authentically evaluate students' knowledge while still being able to work that into sort of the pipeline, the flow of my current classes. And so what I ended up developing was this platform called Rhetorics Lab, which allows oral exams to be deployed at scale. And so this platform's more than just like video uploads. It handles the delivery of questions, the capture of videos, and then presents those videos to instructors in a structured grading dashboard. And the delivery of questions can be configured in sort of a spontaneous, off-the-cuff format to replicate real-world sort of Q&A, face-to-face conversations, as well as more of an open format where students see the question, have time to think of their response, and then hit record when they're ready. And so this method, which I've tried out in my classes, and then I think there's probably 10 or 12 other classes who have tried the platform out. It allows us to more authentically gauge knowledge in a classroom setting where it's not always obvious anymore what's the student's work and, as I said, what they just prompted. So there's this sort of comfort level, I think, with being an instructor and sort of having this confidence that students know what they should know. But there's a lot of pedagogical benefits to going this route with oral assessments. Students realize pretty quickly that it's challenging to talk about things compared to write about things. And I think that you really have to internalize information to then be able to turn around and communicate that effectively. So we're seeing that students are spending more time studying, they're engaging in more active study habits when they're preparing for one of these assessments. But on top of that, there's also just the communication skill building aspect of it, right? That in sort of the traditional college setting, we have our end of semester group presentations where 4 people stand up and kind of awkwardly go through a PowerPoint deck, right? But realistically, students, especially early in their careers, aren't going to be in that sort of presentation format like this, right? Those communication skills are going to come out in one-on-one interactions with their colleagues, their bosses, co-workers. And I think a platform like this that seamlessly integrates into the workflow of a course helps build those skills in a lightweight way and over time without having to wait to these sort of big sort of presentation formats. And I think as we look at where things are going, this ability to communicate effectively, communicate what the AI has done, what you've done with AI is going to be more and more important over time. And so this project's been a lot of fun, and I think it really has a lot of potential for developing our students and really trying to tap into their knowledge in a different way.
So mine was just reporting on a classroom exercise. I had a grant last summer, a small grant to develop AI-based exercises for use in business law and ethics classes. So I wanted to share an anecdote that I think is happening in the real-life legal world, which shows why even legal topics courses here at Boise State need to be thinking about these kinds of things. So I had a conversation with a lawyer last year who's a practicing attorney at a big firm in the Midwest, and he says he had a client and he had to compare a contract to a statute. So does the contract conform to whatever this statute says? So he spends an hour on it, which is probably, I don't know, $600 worth of time, and he finds 4 ways the contract doesn't match the statute. He puts it in an AI, and in an instant, the AI finds all 4 things he found and 2 more. And so at some point, as a practicing lawyer, he's not going to be able to bill for that. Because who wants to pay $600 to someone for something you can get for free? Like, I'm not an economics professor, but I think the incentives there are misaligned with the future of law. Now, again, we're not a law school, but we train students in legal reasoning and legal thinking to prepare them for using law in business. So I took 2 classes. One is our class on commercial law, and another is a class on corporate social responsibility, business ethics, that type of thing, and developed 14 assignments for each class. 7 on using AI as a skills builder for the class itself, and 7 on AI, using AI as training for what they might do with it in the course of their careers. So, for example, for AI skill building for the class, it might say, make a game for me like the Oregon Trail that's based on this class. And I would have them upload content from the class, which we can do because my classes are based on open content. And it would generate a game for them to play that would review the content with them, or generate multiple choice questions, or go back and forth with them in a scenario and have them customize the scenario for an industry they're interested in. So in the prompt I gave them, I really like board games. So it's give me a scenario with these parameters with this industry, and it would generate it. So then they're analyzing something with the class, with a tutor that's focused on what they're interested in. Then for the AI that they might use in the real world, we'll do things like compare two terms and conditions from a contract, a buyer's terms and a seller's terms. Show how you can upload these both to an AI and have the AI compare them and find out where there's problems. Because legally, when buyers say one thing and sellers say one thing and they disagree, then everyone pretends there's a contract. And in fact, there's all these disagreements, then you have problems when something goes wrong. And so having an AI to sift through that as an exercise works. On the ethics side, you can take a model, how to reason through an ethical dilemma, and have the AI help you apply the model to a real world scenario. So it's a way to take ethical thinking and not outsource it, but use an AI to apply a framework and see where that framework leads as a tool. So all in all, I think that when you face an uncertain future, particularly with how AI is going to influence the types of jobs that bear in the classes I teach, it seems that at least taking these kind of baby steps to say, how can we go halfway to doing things in class that might work in real life really matters. The feedback, I think, was generally good. I've since taken these assignments and adapted them to use in MBA classes, and I think it's going to lead to a strong foundation for the future.
I teach a class on generative AI. And a big part of my class, a big part of my class is teaching students from all sorts of majors. About half my students are games interactive, and media majors. They're not business students. And since I teach in a business college, I like to show them how to use like business tools, frameworks in this instance. And they've got this ongoing assignment they do. And I started out with a spreadsheet with 8 different frameworks, business frameworks, SWOT analysis, the 4 Ps, ADA, ways for them to see if their idea would be an interesting side hustle. Well, I thought, 8's really good. I better be better with more. So fast forward a couple years, a little bit of focus or scope creep, and all of a sudden I have 116 frameworks in here. Very comprehensive. Very difficult to use. Pretty much everybody uses just the first few, but I've got interesting stuff in there like nursing, different things for your medicine, different nursing frameworks for different colleges. I've got a lot of stuff on storytelling because I do teach a class that we talk about storytelling with data. And it just became very unwieldy. That was the biggest issue here. So I was thinking, I teach a class on AI. I bet I can have an AI create a front end for me, create a way to interact with all of this much easier. So I've got access to Gemini. I fired up Gemini last year and said, and told it what I've got. I've got this huge spreadsheet. I've got all this data in here I needed to update dynamically. It really was like 3-paragraph prompt. It wasn't really anything too big. First one out, it worked really well. It did what I wanted to do, and it did it in a way that I hadn't really thought about. So I was like, I bet I can make this better. It took me 5 prompts just in succession to get an interface that worked really, really well. Now I just put in, here's what I want to do. It goes through all of the tags and all of the information I have on every single framework. It picks out the top whatever that work with it. You click a button underneath it, and it gives you a prompt that you can use for whatever you're using. Super simple. And that's how I was able to show students how we could go from something really, really complex, 116 lines, down to something very simple by using programming. And an interesting aspect of this class as well is that I get students from across campus. A couple semesters ago, I had a history student in the class. I also had one of the history professors. And the history professor, not the most technical person in the world. On day one, I had her writing a program using Google Colab, using AI to write a very simple program, but it was something she'd never done before, and she was able to use it. And that's how I started that class that semester. Each semester is a little different how I start it, but I do have that aspect of programming. And even the rest of my classes, I at least have one class where I have them develop something interesting. Usually it's like a Mad Lib, something fun. And I do have a few students that didn't show me, like right after, the real crazy lengths they go to. When you show people how easy these tools are to use, those that are really interested in it, those that are, that have that internal motivation, they can do amazing things, and they do amazing things. It's really interesting to see what students take from this and what they do. So there is a way that I'm using it in one of my classes. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. We can move on to the next slide. Excellent. Well, over the years, I and my students have written about 750 employee handbooks for real. And the last 2 years have been very fascinating. We have different sections of the handbook, a paragraph maybe on attendance policies, a paragraph on dating, a paragraph on obtaining gifts from clients, and then suddenly they write 5 pages of great information on pets in the workplace. How many of you think pets in the workplace are your greatest issue in your business? Okay, I thought so. So I don't think it's that appropriate for 5 pages, but I've been finding out that we got to deal with this issue. And so what I've done in my classes, I have these 3 levels of in-class evaluation that have been developed. First thing, I have students brainstorm. They actually use their brains if available, and they brainstorm various vacation provisions and write a policy without AI help. Why vacations? There are too many considerations about vacations, about 40 plus, that AI will come up with. I want students to come up with first, and then I have AI do the brainstorming, and then we compare the results. That's an in-class practice. Now, next step, students actually write the employee handbook based on the Zoom interviews with the client, and then I do an analysis focusing on the vacation policies. What did they do? How did they use AI? And then I ask them, hey, what did you use? Where did you use AI for the rest of the handbook? Which means 20 to 50 pages long, depending on the client. And then the third level, since it's for a real client, I talk to the client. Instead of going over the entire handbook, why not talk about the most difficult topic, and that is vacation policies, because of all the things you have to do with it. So I want to make sure that the final output represents what the client really wants and gives a good flavor of what Boise State is all about. And with the 3 levels, it really helps me make sure that the entire handbook is very consistent rather than 5 pages on pets in the workplace. So what pets do you guys have? How important is it in the company? So I'm done unless you have any questions.
Imagine you graduated with an English degree or a math degree or a biology degree, and now you find yourself in the first year of an MBA program. This is the experience, as you may know, of about half of our students in our career track MBA program. So they're smart, they're motivated, but many of them are not familiar with basic business concepts like segmentation. So, to this past week in my Fundamentals of Marketing class, which is one that they take in their first year of the program, I introduced the Jobs to be Done framework, which is a way of segmenting the market that's a little bit different. So rather than relying on traditional observable characteristics like demographics, we think about the underlying jobs or needs that consumers have when they seek a product. So I might hire a Wilder pizza for a romantic date night, but I might hire Domino's Pizza if I want to feed a bunch of kids at a birthday party, right? So to introduce and have students practice this concept, I had them pick a product, then take their favorite consumer review site, sample about 50 consumer reviews, and put it in their favorite large language model to see what jobs it could generate based on those consumer reviews. So they started with a prompt like this. They instructed the LLM, you are a market researcher. I'm going to give you these consumer reviews. Help me figure out what jobs these products are doing. One group of students chose athletic brewing. The kids these days aren't drinking real alcohol, so they took 50 consumer reviews from the Amazon platform. And this was the top 3 set of jobs that was identified by their model, ChatGPT. So first, to enjoy the taste and ritual of beer without the alcohol. So people like former drinkers or weekday drinkers. A second separate job for a separate group of consumers, these athletes that want to stay healthy but still enjoy their beer. And then finally, People who just want to fit in, you're holding a beverage, you don't want to stand out and be conspicuous, it looks like a beer, why not? And so generally, students saw the value of this jobs to be done framework in terms of grouping consumers. But in the process of debriefing, I asked them about some of the drawbacks. And they were very quick to jump to the garbage in, garbage out problem. So a lot of these consumer reviews, if they just have a bunch of, emoticons and mashed letters, it's not going to generate a lot of helpful feedback. Also, there might be bias. Very satisfied or dissatisfied consumers leave reviews. So they were able to identify some of these drawbacks. One very enterprising and high-achieving group triangulated across models. So they put this prompt into ChatGPT and Claude and others and pulled out the top jobs that surfaced. So they could see some of the drawbacks to this approach, as well as how this could be helpful to a small business who's just trying to get a general sense of some of the jobs that their products are doing for their consumers. But in the process of debriefing, I was actually surprised to find out that while a lot of students do use LLMs for their personal and professional life, a significant percentage of them had never experienced them until joining the program. So this is actually a really great opportunity. We get to expose students to these tools that they'll be able to use in their job, as well as foster this critical thinking and AI literacy as they're getting ready to go out and do their jobs to be done.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Nicole Holden. So I teach in the undergrad program here. I teach accounting information systems. So I'm doing a new project this semester on emerging technology, and I'm using Deloitte's Tech 2026 Trends. And there's about 8 different segments in this report, and each group in my class chooses a different segment and they present on it at the end of the semester. So I picked out 3 to just kind of give you a flavor of what we're gonna do this semester. The first one is AI agents. So these we're gonna look at reconciliations and approval processes and how AI agents can actually help us in those processes, but also we're gonna look at risks and controls that we can implement in order to improve those processes with AI agents. So who authorizes what AI does? What evidence does AI give you? Also, where do we need humans to interrupt or look at what AI is doing and give kind of the human element into the output there? They're gonna give me a control map that they're gonna present the class. So I'm excited to see their risks and their processes and their controls as it relates to AI agents. They're also gonna look at physical AI. So we're thinking inventory, we're thinking fixed assets, we're thinking drones, we're thinking robots, and we're asking, where does this data come from that robots generate? Where does the data come from that robots and drones generate? And is it reliable? Should we rely on this data? What controls can we put around robots and drones in order to make sure that it is reliable? What processes should we implement in order to make sure that data is reliable? So it's really hands-on and interesting. What about data tampering with robots? That's something that some of us might have thought about, but that's definitely going to be an issue in the future. So another one is cybersecurity, looking at data integrity. So any data that comes in through AI, is it trustworthy? What are the safeguards? How are we ensuring that those are actually implemented? How are we checking those safeguards? Are we following up with monitoring, and what are we doing there? And so I have the students at the end, after they've come up with their presentations, present in front of everybody. And I'm hoping it builds confidence, because we're gonna scrutinize each other with some questions. I know I'm mean, but we're gonna scrutinize each other with some questions, and we are building confidence and critical thinking in the classroom. So I'm really excited about that and applying that to this emerging tech, specifically in accounting, specifically with Deloitte's 2026 Emerging Tech document. So I'm excited, and thank you all.
So when ChatGPT first came out, I adopted it in my class heavily. Every single class, we would have an activity that would be reinforcing AI. And at the end, my test scores got up, it improved student performance, but I noticed something, that the variance within students seemed to increase. That some of my students were really benefiting a lot from AI. In other words, other students, you'd read their work and it was like there was no voice there. They just lost who they were. And they just clearly had outsourced far too much to AI. And what had occurred to me is, man, I've been teaching my students to use AI. I've been using it in my class, but I didn't provide a very good framework to think when they should use it and how they should use it. It was just binary, use or don't use. And so then I developed a framework that could help me, one, figure out how to teach my class more effectively. And so now when I do these activities, they hit each quadrant that I'm going to talk about, so that they can see different use cases of AI and what's the downside if you offload something, right? And then, so I'm going to go over this framework, and then I'm going to use some student work that they built, right? So my final assignment is I have 2 assignments, one a creative assignment, use AI for something creative in your work, and then 2 a group assignment where you have to use AI for your actual company to make it improvement in some meaningful way. And this is my MBAs. So I break down the framework of what's the task. Is it exploration or efficiency, right? Then the next, where's the locus of control, the locus of generation? Where's that mostly coming from? Is it mostly coming from the human or the AI? So to start with, and probably the student that was the most impressive, he built his own search engine. Blew my mind. I couldn't believe he did that. But he was annoyed at Google, and he was like, you know what? I want to have a search engine that is based on my preferences, the values that I care about. I'm going to make a ranking source of these 5 things, and I'm going to make it Boise specific, and I'm going to have AI help me code this. So now, when I search, it's going to be based on what I want, right? So that's that top exploration with human in control, right? I had another student, this is Planner, where it's all about efficiency, still the human's in control. There was a student of mine, he was a part of the HR role in his company. And that can be really time consuming, right? And he automated parts of it to the point where 70% of the human labor was gone, was automated by AI at the end, right? Down here for portal versus exploration, I have a student who works at Micron. And engineers oftentimes use a lot of vocabulary or acronyms, and it becomes very specific to that area. And he put up on board a real email he got, and it made absolute no sense at all. I couldn't read it, and he goes, I'll be honest, when I first got this, I couldn't read it either. I have no idea what this is. So what he did is he built a custom GPT of all these acronyms, all of these words that were unique to Micron, that now any employee can come in and engage in Portal, whether it could be like, hey, I don't know what this means, AI. Help me understand what this means, and it can break down all of those weird communication things that get lost. Then here's my last one, processor, where the AI is in control. It's all about efficiency. This was for a creative time, and I thought it was one of the coolest assignments or coolest things the student did, where here's a dad, he's gone a lot at night, and he loves reading bedtime stories for his kid, but like 2 nights a week he's gone. So he took an AI and he fine-tuned it on the exact stories his sons love, right? All the stories his sons love. And then he fine-tuned another model on his voice. And so when dad's gone, his son can say, I want to hear a story about rocket ships. And the AI will write a story based on rocket ships in the very style that his son likes, and will read it to him in his dad's voice, which was incredible, right? And so that's what I would say is the power of, at times, giving people a framework to think about how they can use AI, is it helps them see what's possible, and then also helps them not lose their voice in it, right? That's the downside. When we don't give them a framework and don't give them, hey, this is how you can use this tool, here's the use case that we're looking for, here's the downside if you outsource your mind in this part. If we don't give them the vocabulary, then they'll use it incorrectly. Whereas if we can give them more vocabulary, we can talk more nuance of like, hey, here's the way I want you to do this paper or this work. If you're doing Portal the whole time where the AI is doing all the thinking and it's completely writing the whole thing, that output is going to be boring and there will be no voice. You will be missing. But if we fail to have these kind of frameworks and these vocabulary so that we can talk to our students, right, that's what's needed for them to be more strategic in their use case, is having frameworks and vocabulary. All right, that's my time.
I have a little bit more detailed notes here, and this is kind of a very much summary, but you'll see some interesting themes, and a lot of stuff that I have seen elsewhere and thought about. One, the human in the loop mandate. Not too long ago, the Accounting Advisory Council met with our accounting department, and I heard a lot about human or expert in the loop. that the accounting firms were looking at this the same way. We got to have somebody that's taking responsibility, accountability. We can't just click the button and say this is done. And so validating outputs, human accountability, you're driving, not drifting away. Some other thoughts in here are, so the driver mindset is actively drive the tool via prompting, kind of what Steve was saying about, give them knowledge so they consciously and cognitively know what they're doing with it. Don't passively receive answers. Unique insight, every employee is now viewed as technology personnel. Was an interesting insight. Section 2, governance and efficiency. Data guardrails, strict prohibition on sharing IP company data with public models. I think we know that's super important. That's been a hurdle at times for here at Boise State as well, that we wanted to make sure that we didn't have student data out there that shouldn't be. Couldn't we use it to help assist us in grading, or is that going to the model and going to be used in the public domain? Process optimization, automate the mundane tasks to free time for high-level analysis. I think that's what we're all hoping for. If you've used it personally, you start to feel a pressure, I do anyway, like, man, I should get this done faster, because you've freed up some time, but then you realize, wow, I need to take now a lot more time vetting and analyzing, and maybe I didn't do that as much before. That's the value add that I've seen. Continuous upskilling or embrace lifelong learning. Adoption outpaces training. Graduates must embrace lifelong learning. And that's something we talk a lot about, and I think that we all hope for. Of course, we're preaching to the choir here. Here you are in the advisory council for a College of Business and Economics. We're all faculty. I think the question is, if this is a distribution curve, how do we get those maybe on the part of the curve that look at what they call the sheepskin effect, right? The degree used to be on sheepskin. They just want the paper. They just want to say, I got the degree and move on, and they're entering into a workforce that's not going to value that. They're not going to have the entry-level, low-level jobs for them, which leads last to this other third bullet here, or third area. Is this the new table stakes or an enhancer? Is this just what's required for them to come to the table and not just use it as an answer generation tool, but truly use it in a competitive and upskilling way? One commenter said there's the fear that AI handling junior tasks breaks the development pipeline for future experts. I think that's a really huge challenge to think about. Implementation versus usage, the technical versus strategic skills. Do new hires need technical implementation skills or just query formation skills? That was one of the questions. In the bottom here, the ideal we're seeing in some of the feedback from you was AI augmented, think with AI, apply ethics and expertise. I don't think this is just because we want to not get taken over by robots. I think a lot of the executive level, and I'm sure many of you have used this and realized there are limits. It can be enhancing. If you're like me, the biggest fear is that junior level trading. Or if you have children, wow, this is a better tutor than me on calculus. Should I just turn it over to the tutor, or do I need to, what's the human involvement here? What are the long-term risks of that? We have a similar problem here as they come out of high school, different levels of preparation, and they arrive and we say, okay, so there may be some people that are lower on their deficient in certain skills. How do we get them up ready to this next level? With the same professional preparation. They know about a career, they understand what they're going into, but also bolt on these extra skills.